I live in Oregon, and I have lived here most of my life. In my time in Oregon, I have lived in and visited many parts of Oregon. Often, I hear people, both from inside and outside of Oregon, try to describe Oregon with a few generalizations that are often overly broad or sometimes just plain inaccurate. Many of these generalizations have to do with the population centers and demographics of Oregon and how much of a difference there is demographically and politically between Portland and the rest of Oregon. One thing I have heard from time to time is that half of the population of Oregon lives in Portland. Whether that is true or not depends on definitions. The population of the city of Portland itself, according to the recent 2020 census, is a little over 652,000 people, compared to Oregon's 4,237,000. Doing the math, this is only about 1/6 of the population of Oregon. The county that Portland is mostly located in, Multnomah County, has a population of 815,000 people, still only around 1/5 of Oregon's population. Portland actually has parts in two other counties, Washington and Clackamas. These counties also include Portland suburbs, and together they are usually what is referred to as the Portland metropolitan area. Together, these three counties make up 44% of Oregon's population. If we add Marion County, the home of Oregon's capital, Salem, we get to 52% of Oregon's population. Salem is about an hour south of Portland, and it is quite feasible, if not exactly convenient, to commute between the two. For now, we can say that Portland, its suburbs, plus the Salem area make up 50% of Oregon's population. So using those definitions, it is possible to say that half of Oregon's population lives in Portland. The two problems with this are, first, that much of this area is not really what people talk about when they talk about Portland. To say that half of Oregon's population lives in Portland only works if we consider this farmland in Washington County, Portland, and if we consider the peak of Mount Hood to be Portland. These four counties that make up 50% of Oregon's population are also not small. Together, they are about 4,000 square miles, twice the size of Delaware, a little smaller than Connecticut, or about the size of Jamaica or Cyprus. Perhaps the most accurate way to phrase it is that Oregon's population is concentrated in an area around Portland. Extending outwards, the next 25% of Oregon's population lives in the rest of the Willamette Valley and in Deschutes County, where the rapidly growing city of Bend is located. Deschutes County is on the other side of the Cascades and is different from the Willamette Valley, but to get up to 75%, I am including it along with the rest of the Willamette Valley, which includes Eugene, Corvallis, Albany, and some Salem and Portland suburbs. Together, this area makes up 75% of Oregon's population. If we add in southern Oregon, Grants Pass, Medford, and Roseburg, as well as the North Oregon coast and the Columbia River Gorge, that is another 15% of the population, and these areas altogether add up to 90% of Oregon's population. The other 10%, a little over 400,000 people, live in the rest of Oregon, the two counties on the southern coast, and all of central and eastern Oregon except for Deschutes County. One of the problems with talking about Oregon is that from the viewpoint of Portland, a city of 650,000 people, the towns of the Willamette Valley might seem small, but they are still much larger than the cities of eastern Oregon. For example, McMinnville, a small town 40 miles from downtown Portland, has a population of 34,000 people, more than the 22,000 people who live in the counties of Harney, Lake, and Grant put together, which together have an area greater than the Netherlands or Maryland. NBA reserve player Brian Scalabrine once told a heckler, "I'm closer to LeBron than you are to me." In the same way, downtown Portland is closer to the farm country of the Willamette Valley than either of them are to the truly vast empty spaces of eastern Oregon. This is my view, at least, having lived in all three. But it is a matter of perspective. For many people who live in central Portland, even the inner suburbs are very distant, while for someone living in a small coastal town like Brookings, Eugene or Medford are big cities. I am reluctant to get into descriptions of partisan politics, because they are not a total guide to what political attitudes might be, but it is also instructive to note that the ring of counties outside of Portland is still Democratic leaning. For example, in the 2020 presidential election, this ring of counties gave 55% of its votes to Joseph Biden. And there are many differences inside this area. College counties like Lane and Benton are much more liberal than suburban counties like Yamhill and Polk. But even the conservative areas are only conservative by the standards of Portland. A suburban county that is 50-50 in its vote outcome would be seen as liberal across the Midwest and impossible in the Deep South. There is an area of Oregon that is deeply conservative. The 3 counties in eastern Oregon have given more than 70% of their vote to the Republican presidential candidate in every election since 2000. When looking at a map, that looks like the other political side of Oregon. But as mentioned previously, those 3 counties together have less than 1% of Oregon's population. As much as Oregon is divided, it is divided the way most U.S. states are divided, between the cores of big metro areas on one hand and exurbs of metro areas, or smaller metro areas, on the other. The word rural is a shibboleth in U.S. culture and politics right now, being used as a stand-in for a network of social and political attitudes. I have seen descriptions of Medford and Jackson County as being rural. While Medford is a smaller metro, it still has over 300,000 people, a university, an international airport, and several large hospitals. But within a certain use of rural as a shibboleth, it is referred to as rural. If there is one thing I want people to take away from this, it is to not make glib generalizations and categorizations of Oregon or any other geographical area. Communities lay along a spectrum of size and distance, from the largest and busiest urban areas to the more small and distant communities. And even cities of similar size can have very distinct histories, demographics, and societies. So, in conclusion, Oregon is a land of contrasts.